The Miami Grand Prix, Tonda. We said it will be difficult to overtake. Time and time again, we have been proven wrong again. What a weekend we had in Miami. And as you said in the previous podcast, it might seem like there's going to be some rain, and there was some rain that absolutely destroyed a strategy of no stop in the sprint, and it was brilliant. How did you enjoy?
It was entertainment from start to finish. Obviously, some of us felt some pain even before the start of the sprint race with Charles Leclerc not even managing to, get to the grid, as he was sent out on inters in conditions that probably called for full wets and aquaplaned into the wall. Therefore, not being able to start from P6 on the grid where he qualified in the sprint shootout. But it was complete chaos, as you say. I don't even know where to begin. But we might as well mention again Oscar Piastri. As I said, as I predicted, stayed in that position of being the world championship leader at the moment. Something that seems to be quite a comfortable position for him. He's now equaled Lando Norris's wins.
Well, he's overcome his wins, I think. Yeah, I think he has one more win. I think in Miami he equaled Lando Norris, and now he has more.
Now he has more
wins than Lando Norris.
And who knows where the rest of the year might take us? We already talked about it last week, but as we can see, between the two of them, I don't think it's gonna be. I think the gloves are gonna come off at some point, and then that point might come sooner rather than later. Yeah. But what did you make of the whole Miami Grand Prix? What are your first impressions?
Impressions are just like you feel like a kid in a candy store. You just have no freaking clue where to look first, because you had the whole weekend beginning with the news of Verstappen newly being a father to his newborn daughter, making him miss the media day, which is the most Verstappen thing that could happen to his kid. Project Verstappen 2.0 probably incoming. But even as well, the Miami Grand Prix has been extended by so many years. So maybe even Verstappen's daughter will be able to race in there, but with Fernando Alonso, of course. But the weekend was just crazy. And for some reason, I think this was the best sprint weekend I remember.
Could be.
We had a brilliant performance by Kimi Antonelli, who has taken the sprint pole, the P1 in the sprint pole.
What a performance.
And it was Toto Wolff told him something like, "You're not Andrea today," or something like this, which was pretty funny. But he was on top of the game, and it's what we said. He always took some time in his categories to find his rhythm, and he always was incredibly fast when it came to the latter stages, and maybe this is what we are getting to see right now. How were you impressed? Because I was
definitely.
I was so happy.
Before I talk about Kimi, I will also just clarify that I said Big Daddy to reaction of Max Verstappen and becoming a father, not because that is my personal nickname for him. That is what Yuki Tsunoda called him at some point during the weekend, I think.
Big Daddy.
I think, and actually, also during their Lego race, the driver spray that was a Lego race.
Something. Did you see the whole? Did you see the whole replay of the race?
I did not see the whole replay. I know that's
brilliant. Play that.
It finally saw, in equal machinery, we saw that Ferrari finally gets anywhere close to the front of the grid. After they were crashed into by George Russell, who also ran over his phone. But that seemed like a lot of fun, and the drivers seemed to have so much fun.
It was so cool. I enjoyed it a lot. I just saw some replays initially, But then I played the whole lap, and it was pure cinema. They were going out with the slick tires. They were going for the Ferrari strategy: slick tires, wet surface, brilliant conditions. And when you look at, for example, Hamilton's camera, he was having the time of his life. He was laughing like I think as hard as he's crying right now in the real actual F1 car. And this is probably what they want to race with right now.
Might be faster than the Ferrari at the moment.
Might be faster.
But to go back to Kimi, yeah, I mean, what a performance that was.
Yeah.
I mean, he got, obviously his first sprint ball and starting from the front of the grid for the first time. So naturally, he didn't stay in that position for long, and he got Piastri. Piastri, who seems to have been learning some moves from Max Verstappen, who he fought last week in Saudi Arabia, but he pulling some questionable moves off in the first couple of corners of the race. But Kimi understandably was a bit upset, and also was crashed into by Max Verstappen in the pits.
Yeah, the sprint pole didn't seem to be converted that well.
But even Toto was on the radio after saying, "Kimi, this is not a serious race. This
is a mini race.
This is a mini race." For a terrible fake Austrian accent. But I think it just shows that Kimi is doing a stellar job in that Mercedes. And Toto Wolff did say, if you thought this was something, just wait until we get to the tracks that he knows even better, including. Some of the ones that are coming up now.
Yeah, Imola.
Yeah.
Hashtag not putting the pressure on my rookie. But as you say, Piastri is putting his elbows out. I don't know. No investigation necessary.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, or how do you see this? Because my initial reaction is that Piastri kind of pushed Kimi off, but then at the same time, Piastri didn't really push him out wide. Kimi could still brake just and wait for Piastri and slot in into P2. But it also seemed like a combination of outbraking himself a little bit. It was an odd one, but, who would not be under pressure? When you're in P1, you know that the cars behind you in their McLarens are just quicker. And you're in P1 for the first time in the wet. So
yeah, in the wet as well. Exactly. I mean, I think it comes down to, again, as we talked about last time, the ambiguity of the rules that seem to be permeating this season and the last. Of it really now just becoming a race of let's whoever gets to the apex first. And
but see, Piastri didn't seem to be as aggressive, I think, as Verstappen perhaps would be. But he has been Piastri'd, and it left him pretty furious because in the media pen he was saying something like, "Oh well, so this is allowed? So okay, you're gonna see something in turn one for the main race, guys." And I was awaiting a little bit of the Daniel Kvyat torpedo move, but it's good that he didn't send it like Perez did a few years back and almost taking out Max Verstappen in turn one in Miami. But it was definitely entertaining, but it was really sad to see Kimi Antonelli not being even on the podium, because as you say, he had to miss his pit stop because Red Bull has again had pit stop problems, which is very un-Red Bull-like. They have been dominant in every single area of the pit stops in the recent years, being quick, being reliable, being very efficient, and, seems like everything is getting away from them right now. And we called it last year in Miami, right here.
Yeah,
we were saying it, that since
it's going to come apart.
Since, Adrian Newey left, it's all becoming and starting to be in shambles. And seems like our crystal ball has been the one to talk. But nevertheless, we've still had pretty interesting battle in the sprint between the two McLarens, because seemed like Piastri didn't have as much pace on the intermediate tires as Lando Norris did. And, we saw him taking the chicane just completely straight. It seems like he's been getting under a lot of pressure, and Norris has been pretty brilliant on those intermediate conditions.
Yeah.
And yeah, then the safety car luck struck once again for Lando Norris, didn't it?
It did. But this time, it also helped, surprisingly, the team with not a lot of luck this season so far. And the team that, unlike Red Bull, has been on top of their pit stops, if not anything else. And that was Ferrari, with Lewis Hamilton coming out. And in the end, thanks to the safety car, managing to get a podium, getting the P3.
I actually think that safety car probably didn't help them.
Yeah?
I genuinely think that maybe Norris could have even fallen behind Hamilton, potentially. Because Norris he stayed out too long, and actually Hamilton was one of the first to pit for the slick tires.
Yeah, okay.
And, at that time when Ferrari said, well, I think it was Hamilton's call to go into the pit lane, to go on the soft tires instead of the mediums.
Mediums for 5 laps or 10 laps or.
Well, McLaren did that, which is I was pretty surprised about that. But still, when I saw them pitting for those soft tires, I was just thinking I'm gonna get the full Ferrari experience once again. But I was proved wrong. They were on top of the game, and it seems like for Lewis Hamilton, it only gets right when it comes to the sprint races, because it's been 2 sprint races, and Hamilton has been on podium, winning one and being third in the second one. So
China feels like a lifetime ago at this point. With who was winning basically in the second race of a
distant memory at this point.
I mean, Imola is supposed to bring a lot of upgrades for a lot of different teams. And I think also it will be Imola where we will find out whether we are in for a glimmer of hope during this triple header for Ferrari, who have been really struggling, or if we're in for a triple header experience similar to the one that we had last year after Monaco, where we had a collision between the 2 Ferraris and Charles Leclerc not scoring any points in like 2 races.
Well, let's not.
This time,
let's hope that this is not going to happen.
This time we saw the 2 of them in P7 and P8, or what was it, P6, P7, somewhere that, with fighting Carlos Sainz out of all people. It's pretty funny, considering where he left from last year and who he was replaced by and where he went.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the Williams is really just knocking on Ferrari's door, being like, you sent us Carlos. Well, we're back with Carlos, but this time we're not. We're chasing you, and we're back from the back of the field, and we're fighting with Ferrari. But then we did see a double overtake of the 2 Ferraris getting in front of Carlos Sainz. But in the race, I mean, the Ferrari strategy and the team orders and the radio messages were just pure insanity, in my opinion.
Let's talk about that, because
switching the cars, and then at the end, what was it? The Ricky's telling Lewis that Sainz is 1.4 seconds behind, and Lewis being like, "Oh yeah, should I let him pass too?"
Yeah,
get really frustrated. But what did you make of this situation?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I think that at this point, seems like Sainz got an upgrade going to the Williams. We almost got a through goes Hamilton once again, because Leclerc was overtaking his former teammate, and while he sent a dive bomb down the inside,
quite wide,
it helped Hamilton, and he overtook almost both of them. He just rammed Sainz out of the way, saying, "Look, this is my new teammate. This is my new boy.
We need to make space for Lewis."
Exactly. So for the second time, but the Ferrari team orders, I don't know. Like, it was horrible. I think this is what is wrong with Ferrari, because not only the fact that they were fighting over the team radio like this, both of the cars, I think at this point it might be much easier to just put a comm between Leclerc and Hamilton, and they might communicate it much better between themselves than the pit wall, because The worst thing about all of this is that everybody, even if they are a Formula One fan or even if they're not, they just know it's wrong. They just know that whatever happened was not the best teamwork that could have been. And the worst thing about that is that Frederick Vasseur came out after racing that he thinks they executed that pretty well. Frederick, I don't know if you were watching the same race as we were, but that did not happen.
I have to tell you, as someone who is stepped into the Italian Twitter, it's a
Italian gossip,
Italian Ferrari gossip, and fan accounts of Ferrari that I see pop up as well. They are turning on our dear-old Fred. Fred Vasseur, who was seen as, a shining beacon of hope, of French hope, coming into the team to turn it around, which just to be clear, I think that he's done a good job at. I mean, I'm not to trash talk Binotto here, but I think that Vasseur really made some strides with the team, as we saw last year. I mean, there was some brilliant performances. But now, people are less than happy, understandably, and how quick they forget. Last year, they say you're only as good as your last race in Formula One when you're a driver, but it seems to be that even when you're a team principal.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's just hope that Fred has something up his sleeve, or hiding behind his shiny bald head. that he can
beacon.
Shiny beacon, that he can bolt onto the cart once they get to Italy. Otherwise, I think the fans will eat him alive pretty soon.
Yeah, because, it was mere embarrassing, I think. Because, on the other hand, I think that Hamilton is exactly what Ferrari needs right now. Because the way he called them out, I think this is something that they didn't have.
I agree.
For a whole long time, Maybe the last time they kind of had it was with Alonso, who was... He was kind of just, bashing them, but I think that Hamilton is doing what is necessary, and that is just stating the obvious,
Yeah.
Just, it shouldn't take you 5 laps to decide that if Hamilton is on fresh mediums, on the opposite strategy of Leclerc, let's use that. Let's punch the hole, let Leclerc be in his DRS. And then catch up to Antonelli. And when if Hamilton's tires die, then you switch the positions back. It shouldn't be that difficult because, we know that, I think that if Leclerc wasn't teammate of Hamilton would have just sent it, down the inside. Like, see you later. I don't care. See you later.
Yeah, I think they're still in this period of, some building up the respect, having, I'm not saying that they're going to have less respect for each other, but I think it's still the first couple of races.
They're not fighting for wins.
They're not fighting for wins, so you don't really want to piss off your teammate, your new teammate, for no reason.
Exactly. They're still playing chess. They're still happy with themselves.
They're having a tea break, as Hamilton said.
Yeah, but I mean, that was a good point.
But I think, but I think there are 2 paths forward with Ferrari, or 2 possible futures for Ferrari to have any hope. One of them is we will see a situation akin to last year's, where Ferrari will develop the car throughout 2025, and we will see them fight for win by the end of, maybe after the summer break. Maybe the Imola upgrades will bring them a couple tenths closer. Or the rest of the year is just like this, and maybe even worse. Yeah, maybe they just keep falling off. But they focus on the 2026 season, on the new regulation. They put all their money on the one card. They, I don't know, make another illegal engine and just come out of the gate swinging. And
at this point,
we enter a new era of Ferrari dominance. And I think those are the only options for fans to, well, not just fans to be happy, but for Fred Vasseur to keep his job, basically. And I'm saying this as someone who is quite very happy with how Fred Vasseur is leading the team. But I think, it's going to come to a point where people, and like shareholders or whatever, Ferrari CEO John Elkann will begin to expect results. Yeah. And if it's not, if it seems hopeless next year, then I think we're in for a rough couple of years. I mean, just like we've seen. But
exactly. Which one?
What even is the better option? What even is the better option?
So let's put the scenario. You are Frederic Vasseur with much more hair at this point, okay? With a less shiny head, with a less round face. What do you do? What do you do with Ferrari at this point? Like, do you go the A route? Do you go with upgrading the car, fighting for wins, and maybe after the shakeup in Spain, where nobody knows what's really going to happen? Some say it's going to favor Red Bull and Mercedes. Some say it's going to hurt Mercedes, and some say it's going to, benefit Ferrari. But we've heard so much about Ferrari being a championship threat that I'm not sure if it's even real for this year. But what route do you take? Because for me, I have a pretty clear vision of what I'd do, like at this point.
I mean, I think it really comes down to, basically, we don't see behind the curtain.
Yeah.
We don't see how much of a compromise you would need to make. Maybe this already is the compromise. How much resources are there to move around between these two projects? So I think, the Ferrari, they're not a team that needs immediate result. As much as it, in the sense of, no matter what happens, Ferrari are staying in Formula 1 for one.
Yeah.
Ferrari is Formula 1 and Formula 1 is Ferrari. They're getting paid, by F1 just to be at this sport because it's just so, there's such an iconic part of it. And I think to Ferrari, because Ferrari is such a proud team as well, conservative, set in their ways, that I think they would much rather hope and try to get that new era of Ferrari on top, maybe in 2026, than to burn out and fall even lower. But of course, that really depends on the people. If you're Frederic Vasseur, and I mean, who knows what his contract is? If Frederic Vasseur has a contract saying, you have 10 years to do a slow game and build this team up, then of course do that. But if maybe there's some pressure that he's feeling from this year already,
it really could have a performance clause, saying that they shouldn't finish below third in the championship or anything.
It's really, there's no way of knowing, and I think I think it's really, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I think it's quite a compelling story as well with Ferrari, because there really is they spent so much time now trying to get back into the top, and they have been so close so many times now with P2s in the Constructors' Championships. How close were they last year? There was 14, 15 points or something, and then before that as well, always so close. I think obviously must be super frustrating for Vasseur and the whole team, but I mean they do seem determined. They don't it's not an Aston Martin situation where it's just where you're asking yourself what is even going on at this team. But
fair enough.
But I mean, who knows? But what would you do?
Like I say, just as much as it hurts, there has been a lot of speculation that the big upgrade package was supposed to come to Imola. Yeah, but at this point,
I think the triple header might be the threshold. Either we're up or we're down. Either we're continuing or we're moving on.
Completely. But I've heard that it's kind of diluted. It's going to be a minor upgrade, in Imola. And at this point, I think they're looking for a solution for the rear suspension, which kind of seems to be the problem at this point. Maybe the rear stability of the car, Hamilton never catching a break, having the worst time in Mercedes the last few years, with the rear stability. And this year, Mercedes suddenly is the most stable car on the grid, seems like. So it's pretty funny. What I would do, I just double down to making sure I know what the problem is. I just spend the CFD hours, the wind tunnel hours.
Yeah.
Rather than on the quantity of upgrades, I would just focus on the quality, because I think there's potential in the car.
Yeah.
But it just needs to be unlocked, and I'd wait for Spain. I just put a huge upgrade package in Spain. And that would pretty much determine the season. Like if there is a fighting chance, why not? You've got 2 brilliant drivers, but at the end of the day, you're so far behind in the championship already. It's just so compelling to just scrap this season, take the damage limit, just do the damage limitation. Say, okay, whatever, we're gonna be 4th, we're gonna be 3rd, probably 3rd, because chuck
unless
a few upgrades on.
Unless they're building the car to win Monaco again, and that's the whole plan of this.
Monaco and Monza, and maybe Imola. And this is a big warning sign to Ferrari that's coming directly from me, because next week,
straight from Ben, but Ben to Vasseur. Ben calling Vasseur.
This is Ben to Vasseur. Next race in Imola. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be watching. And I hope, I just really hope that there is going to be at least a podium, because I've been to 2 races already, okay? I've been to Hungary 2015, which Sebastian Vettel won, Ferrari driver. Hamilton has not been on the podium, okay? Then I've been to Austria 2019, where a Ferrari driver almost won before he got Verstappen, Charles Leclerc. And Hamilton was not even on the podium. If I'm going to be on yet another race where he's not on the podium, which at this point seems, I know, very likely, I'm going to be very sad, because this man has over 200 podiums in 350 races. Frederick, I expect a rocket ship upgrade package for Imola. But it's not supposed to be wet, at least. Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think. Not even sure. But for Ferrari, it just seems like this situation is... It's just... I don't know. I think it's so easy to say it now, but maybe the biggest mistake was just implementing a whole new car concept for the last season with this regulation, with a freaking budget cap.
I still have to believe that, or hope that there was some rationale behind it, and not just the engineers being like, well, why don't we? I'm bored. Let's just try and do something completely different. But
they were so close, right?
And who knows? Maybe if they kept the same car as last year, maybe it would have been even worse. But
who knows?
Ben to Vasseur, maybe, hopefully, maybe you can try in French as well at the end. But I think Ferrari, we just dissected Ferrari, and what the worst thing is about all of this? That next year, since it's a power unit regulation change as well, that it's really anyone's guess what it could be. And apparently there are some struggles with the power unit, as well. Mercedes have saying that at the straight in Monza, just the power cuts out in the middle, and the horsepower just drops for some reason. Yeah,
because 50% of your power is made of an electric engine, and if you deplete your whole battery in 3/4 of the straight, you're suddenly left with only the internal combustion engine, which is supposed to be quite a lot weaker. It's supposed to be only 500 odd horsepower, which is weaker than Formula 2, I'd say, which is quite bizarre.
Yeah, either way, it's just, it's just going to come down to who can crack the code on this engine. So
we need Mattia Binotto once again.
Yeah, the engine master.
The engine master fuel flow system.
Exactly, but so it's, who knows? Is it gonna be Ferrari, Mercedes, Ford for Red Bull? Is it gonna be Audi? Out of nowhere.
Cadillac, probably not.
Yeah. But that's Yeah,
and by the way, Cadillac I think had an event at Miami. I think they were unveiling their colors or something like this, and Sergio Perez was apparently flying in, which was perhaps a subtle hint at what's to come for 2026. But yeah,
The king of the streets.
The king of the streets returning
back for
to
2026.
Back for 2026. Maybe more street races, more Checo wins. Checo wins the championship. Probably not, but anything can happen probably before Ferrari wins at this point. But yeah, the worst thing, about this was that Ferrari was, if this was for P1, P2, P3, there would be perhaps a good side and a bad side, right? But since Williams was genuinely at this point quicker than Ferrari, which was worrying, you had Albon, who finished ahead of both of the Ferraris, I think.
Yeah.
I think Albon was P5. He finished even ahead of Antonelli, who was in P6. And the gap to McLaren was stratospheric. It was a minute. Imagine if Ferrari got lapped. That would be pretty insane.
I think we need to move on from this. Yeah. Otherwise, we're just going to spiral into growing despair.
Yeah, this is just the Ferrari spiral. But speaking of McLaren, welcome. Yeah, this is the thing I didn't need from last year. Now I know how you feel, and it's not great. Anyway, moving on to McLaren. We talked about the sprint race. Lando Norris kind of inheriting the win because it finished under the safety car, and Piastri was supposed to be the winner. But then, for the main race, we had Lando Norris lining up in P2 with, I think, Max Verstappen taking the pole position. Kimi.
He's just been going crazy in the qualifying.
Verstappen is insane in qualifying. His first sector was always like, I think Red Bull had a floor upgrade and only on Max Verstappen's car, but Max Verstappen, he hasn't put a foot wrong pretty much, and 5 red lights and away we go. And it seemed like Lando Norris is never going to learn. He just, again, got bullied by Max Verstappen and he fell back to what? Was it like P6?
Yep.
And Piastri got ahead and he essentially won it where Lando Norris lost it. And let's just talk about the difference between how Piastri races Verstappen and how Lando Norris races Verstappen, because both of them at one point of the race had to overtake Max Verstappen. And we saw that, Piastri took a good few laps just to analyze Verstappen, to kind of put the pressure on. He didn't really intend to overtake because he said it. And, thanks. Finally, somebody said it. He said that it's a big no-no, pretty much, to go around the outside of Max Verstappen when you want to make a move. So he was just setting it up. He was just, when he was on the outside, he conceded the position. He was just putting the pressure on. And when the time came into the turn 1, he just let Verstappen outbrake himself, put the switch back, and never see me again. See you later. But then we had Lando Norris, who, just seemed like he could not overtake Max Verstappen, for God's sake, at all. And is this something that Lando Norris is missing?
I mean, look, I can't turn into the Lando Norris Hate Watch podcast. Last time we said that he needs a therapist. Now we're gonna say that he can't overtake. I mean, what are we doing? But I think Piastri just it's just what we talked about. He seemed to be a bit more collected. But on the other hand, let's also not discount out the possibility of this also being a bit of a Max thing, and the way that he approaches the two drivers. Because I mean, we know that Max he races also different people differently.
Yeah,
races Charles Leclerc differently and Lando Norris. Because I think that he knows that with now Leclerc and now I guess Piastri, that he knows that if he's gonna try what he usually does, that he's gonna get it back as well. Yeah. Which maybe he thinks that he can afford to bully Lando Norris with no repercussions. So, but I don't know. Yeah, is it? Maybe Lando Norris needs to ask Oscar what he's doing differently, but
it's
just really hard to tell.
It was pretty funny to see the reaction of the post-race interview when they were going on the parade or towards the ceremony. And Norris was asked about the maneuvers, and Lando Norris said that with Max, it's either crash or don't pass.
Yeah.
And when he said that, Piastri gave him the funniest look. He was like, "What? What do you mean, man? Like, it was easy." It was funny, but
this is something I also quite I don't want to say dislike, but I don't find too appealing about the way the way that Lando Norris talks about these fights and Max sometimes. It sometimes to me comes off a bit passive aggressive, and in a way that is like, well, I guess he's gonna be like this, Max, and like I said, well, it's either pass or you crash, which I think, if he just said, if he said it more straight on, I don't know.
It is difficult because
rubs me the wrong way a bit.
Yeah, it's difficult because last year,
and also by the way, just a side note, that's not to say that he's not correct. Sometimes when he says this, that
Mexico.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is crash or don't pass. But I think it's also about the way that
definitely
and say them.
But the thing is, he's in a quick car.
Yeah,
but
he is.
It's just the way that Piastri prepared him. He was just constantly putting pressure on. He didn't intend to overtake. In all the opportunities, he was just showing himself in the mirrors of Verstappen. And it seemed like Lando Norris is he's kind of maybe reactive in terms of the comments he's been giving, because last year he got a lot of slack for not going for it, when it comes to taking it to Verstappen.
Yeah.
But then and now it seemed like he was just going for it too soon, or, you just need to find the right moment. And with Verstappen, it's incredibly difficult. Like, let's not pretend we're not two Formula drivers who are sitting here, knowing exactly what you need to do, but it's always very different from a bird's eye view perspective. But, it just seems like Piastri is handling this better than Lando Norris is at the moment. And therefore, even though maybe Piastri didn't have as much raw pace in Miami as Lando Norris did, he did win the race quite comfortably. Which made him extend his championship lead. So which was again, he just used the opportunity. So there's nothing to blame Oscar for. I think he did a brilliant job. And also, let's just come back when we were mentioning Piastri and his championship lead to our predictions, because you predicted.
I did say that
you cooked again.
That Piastri is gonna stay P1. I mean, it wasn't too brave, too bold, depending how you look at it. But yeah, it did happen. Piastri just stayed in control, stayed P1, and seems and even extended his lead. But what about your prediction with Mr. Fernando Alonso?
It did almost come true. It was incredibly close. But unfortunately, in the sprint, Alonso was taken out by a certain Liam Lawson. He was running, I think, in the points for the majority of the sprint.
Yeah.
But then his best friend, Liam Lawson, who he loves so much, they crashed and Alonso was out of the race. So I got 0 points. The same amount of points as Alonso has for this season, which is great. And for the record, I think that Lance Stroll finished P5 in the sprint. So he had like freaking 4 points.
Yeah.
Which is just ironic. But
Lance Stroll is on a doing great.
Great job. Great job.
But what about a prediction for Imola? Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, where you will be in person.
Yeah. Can I predict that I'm gonna win something? No, I can't. Look, my prediction, and I hope it's gonna be true, is that Ferrari will not fumble. They will not have any. You're gonna have to inform me of that because I'm. That's the lucky thing about being in the grandstands. You're not gonna hear the team radios, so you're saved from a lot of pain. So Ferrari's not gonna fumble, meaning they're not gonna make a strategy blunder. They're not gonna make a communications blunder, which can go 50-50. And I need some points, so I just hope and pray that Imola, where it is fundamentally not so hard to overtake, however, we are getting introduced a new tire compound, a C6, the softest one yet. So I hope they didn't just cook myself with this. Rather, Ferrari's gonna cook with the strategy and their car. But what would be your prediction for the Emilia-Romagna, whatever it is, Grand Prix?
I mean, apart from there being a break-in on track and a strange man running across the track and trying to stop the cars.
Oh God.
I know, not to give you any ideas. I was
on the final straight.
I think the final straight. I think after talking about Ferrari so much, we were in a similar headspace because I was going to predict a Ferrari podium.
Oh.
Just as you wished for in a few minutes ago.
There's we're
really putting all of our eggs in into one basket right now for Imola.
Tell me you're a Ferrari fan without telling me you're a Ferrari fan.
Yeah. We're a biased podcast, not objective. No, there's no
journalistic
objectivity here, but
yeah.
Well, let's see, and let's hope, and let's also talk about driver of the weekend.
That is incredibly difficult, by the way.
It is
for this weekend.
It really is, with the sprint, with everything. But who would you?
Honestly, it's very difficult, but maybe more my heart rather than my brain goes with Kimi Antonelli because he was genuinely faster than Russell. He was out-qualifying him in both cases, which that is incredibly difficult, on a track you've never been on.
Yeah.
In your rookie season, in your 6th race. So despite he didn't crash in the monsoon conditions.
Yep.
He managed to score points somehow, even after missing his pit entry after being crashed to by Verstappen because he received a 10-second penalty. And then we had all this mayhem with the post-sprint penalties, such as, Albon getting like a 10-second penalty or disqualified, which was quite crazy. But yeah, I think that Antonelli was having for a rookie, he was having a very solid weekend without any, big mistakes and with a solid pace. So I think he did really well. Who would be your top driver?
We talked about this last week already. But I'm gonna do the unthinkable, and I'm gonna say that my driver of the weekend from the top team and the bottom teams are now one person, because Alex Albon, who managed to get it up to P5 in that Williams, who in front of all the cars that by any sense should be in front of him. I think Albon just why do I say this? Because I think that he is not single-handedly with the help of science, he is moving Williams from that from our mental category of a bottom field team or bottom field drivers into the other. So
I agree.
I think this is where he's bridged the gap.
Yeah, I agree, and for me the bottom field driver would be Alex Albon as well, but this weekend it was just didn't seem like a bottom field anymore.
Exactly, because bottom field, but you're in P5. Then what are Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton then?
F2 at this point, I guess. But I completely agree with you because
Yeah.
Williams wasn't there by chance, by safety car,
Exactly. Yeah,
by crashes, by mayhem.
Yeah.
They were there
Yeah,
on pure pace.
Exactly.
The Williams, Leclerc was barely, holding on to the Williams, and then couldn't hold on to the Williams, and he could barely overtake Williams and break away from the Williams, which, by the way, Carlos Sainz's Williams carried damage through the whole race, I think. So even with a damaged Williams, he still managed to pretty much be on pace of Ferrari, which was, we're not getting into that again, but yeah. Who would be your biggest winner or winners of the Miami Grand Prix?
Well, again, I mean, it's just like last week where I'm just a bit on the same wavelength, but a bit differently, because I would say Kimi Antonelli for my biggest winner. I mean, obviously he got unlucky, or I mean, not just unlucky. Big pressure. He did convert pole, but I think winner just in the terms of really showing his not even potential anymore, but just showing his skill, not just against everybody else, but also against his teammate George Russell, who George Russell. Let's not forget.
Yeah.
While he was in Williams, he was known as Mr. Saturday. Because he was so quick in qualifying, and that's not to say that he's not anymore. George Russell
smashing his teammates with a 0.
George Russell has been silently, quietly having a great year, being in P3s and top 5s, all season long. But
Exactly.
I think Kimi, out qualifying him and being this fast just really shows what's coming, as we already said at the start of the episode.
Yeah, I agree. For me, the biggest winners are Williams. And,
makes sense.
Not only with the amount of points they managed to score, but also with the chassis of a car from last year. They are managing to do the unthinkable. The
chassis that was broken multiple times.
Exactly. The duct tape that has been used has probably destroyed the whole budget cap for last year of Williams, but their pace, it has been pretty incredible, and I think that's just a great sign of what's to come, because if they are gonna bring upgrades, if they are gonna somehow benefit from the Barcelona shakeup after the flexi wings, they are gonna be in the mix. They're not far away from the mix just to go on a rare podium.
Wouldn't be exactly. I wouldn't be. Last year after Carlos was replaced by Hamilton, there was the discussion and again on the internet, on social media, where people like Williams fans and Carlos Sainz fans were saying, "I'm so excited for him to be overtaking Lewis and Charles, and for him to have his first podium." And people, me included, were thinking, "Oh well, are you sure? Who's gonna tell them that Carlos is gonna be struggling in P15 and not being anywhere close to podium?" But we're clearly seeing that the opposite is true, and I would not be surprised if we saw a Williams podium before even the summer break.
Yeah, I agree with you, and Carlos Sainz did actually try to send it on Lewis Hamilton on the last lap in the pretty much the last turn.
That was quite strange. That was almost a double DNF. I don't understand how they both got out of that alive.
They didn't even have damage. It seemed like their tires stick together.
They were stuck for a couple of seconds. Really weird.
It almost seemed like an F1 game, where you just ghost into the car and
no damage.
For me, it seemed like I don't know. For me, it seemed like a little bit of a too late move. Because he said that Hamilton turned in, but Hamilton was just kind of turning into the corner already.
Yeah.
And I think that Hamilton didn't expect it as well, and kind of turned in a little bit earlier than he would have. Yeah. But he still could turn in. The move reminded me a little bit of the move that Verstappen made on Hamilton in Monaco in 2019, if you remember. Hamilton on the completely shot tires. Verstappen just sending it while Hamilton was turning, and the difference was just the barrier. But I guess no further investigation kind of says it all, but because they both could have done something, and I don't know, what do you think about that? But it was just a strange incident towards the end.
But I think it's come to the rating. The time has come to rate the week.
Before we do that, your biggest losers of the weekend.
Oh yeah, true. Biggest. Wow, I'm so positive this episode. Talking about Ferrari's downfall that I would almost forget about biggest losers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just said it, so it's in my mind. But Ferrari, I think, even though it pains, just it wasn't a great show of the state of things. But what would you say?
Yeah. For me, Ferrari has to be. Yeah. Not only the bad indicator of pace, but also the whole way they looked, and also their livery was a bit of an L for me. The special livery was not that special. Seemed like wasn't that pretty at all.
Yeah. Oh, don't even. It's how I every year is the same thing, and I fall for it yet over and over. They say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have a white, or we're gonna have a blue jump, we're gonna have a blue, blue outfit." So I'm like, okay, maybe this year the car is blue. No, well, this is even worse. I don't understand. Half of the car is blue, and the whatever.
Yeah, so
let's
livery.
hope.
So the livery is another one. And the last one for the biggest loss is also because 2 Ferrari engines have failed in the race, which is quite worrying because they just kind of blew on its own. It from Behrman, from Haas, the Ferrari engine just blew away, and Bortoletto's engine also failed in that Stake Sauber. Seems like the Ferrari engine couldn't handle the heat quite as well in this case, but hopefully it's just a cooling issue and not an engine issue. And by the way, for next race, we have a big change. And that is that Jack Doohan is not going to be on the grid.
I mean, we didn't even mention the fact that Flavio Briatore
that's just...
That's the whole... I think we might talk about the next episode once he's actually there. The mastermind behind Crashgate is for somehow made his way back into the paddock.
From lifetime ban to the team principal in a few years is something that we'll talk about.
I think being the team principal of Alpine seems to be a less stable of a job. Seems to have less job security than many other professions. But that's
second
really
seat of Red Bull.
Then second seat of Red Bull.
But we'll talk about that next time.
I would give this race weekend 7.5. 8 maybe.
Only? Huh.
8.
Okay.
Say.
Okay. I'm going for 8.5 because yes, a good part of the race was boring, I'd say. But, the first few laps, the first 15 laps or something, it was just, the sprint, it was just pure chaos, pure cinema. I enjoyed every moment. The Lego racing was amazing.
Yeah, that's true.
I really enjoyed this weekend, and just kind of thinking about the expectations we had for Miami. I mean, considering that it's a solid 8.5 in my books, and probably the best rate of the season so far, or the best weekend of the season so far.
I can get. But I mean, let's hope that the trend keep going on. And let's hope that Imola brings a lot of upgrades for a lot of teams, not naming any names. But we'll see. I think Imola will show a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of team upgrades, in terms of Piastri and Norris and their feud, in terms of the championship battle, in terms of a lot of. So let's stay excited for this coming weekend.
Yeah, let's see you after the Emilia Romagna, whatever it is called, Grand Prix, and hopefully with one happy Tonda and Ben, because I'm gonna be there, and we both
keep your eyes peeled for Ben in the standings, in the stands.
No, maybe in the standings. I'm coming. Yeah. I'm coming because the day before the day before that, I'm gonna be driving a Formula 3 car. So I'm gonna be qualifying and hopefully taking a good challenge for the second Red Bull seat, so I can take it to the McLaren drivers. But let's stay away from our dreams and let's enjoy the Italian Grand Prix, and hopefully we'll have some great racing again. See you next time, and goodbye.
Take care.